everybody, and welcome to the Skyline TEDx event 2022. My name is Vigo, and I'm an 11th grader at Skyline High School. We are this year's event organizers.
My name is Shyam, and I'm a 10th grader at Green Hills High School. 3 years ago, me and Casey both gave a TED Talk here at Skyline, and we really enjoyed the experience, and we gained a lot out of it, such as public speaking skills and being able to meet really a lot of cool people. And we really hope to be able to provide a platform where youth can share their outlook and perspectives on the world.
What is a TEDx event?
TED was founded in 1984 and represents technology, entertainment, and design. Attached up on the slides, we're going to show a video that details more information about the event.
From Kenya to Colombia, from Iraq to Korea, in slums, in schools, in prisons, and in theatres, every day people gather at TEDx events around the world to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. Today, you are part of a global conversation about our shared future. So what is this TEDx? TEDx is an initiative of the TED Conference, a non-profit devoted to ideas worth spreading. We grant free licenses to allow TED-like events to spread globally. This event today is based on the TED Conference format and ideals, but is independently organized by your local community. So please make sure to thank the team of volunteers who worked so hard on today's event. It's their ideas, dedication, and time that made it all possible. It's they who booked all the speakers, and the views you'll hear today are, of course, those of those speakers, not necessarily of TEDs. But we hope their talks spark an exciting conversation among you. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for openness and for critical thinking, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
At this time, we would like to ask all audience members to turn off their phones and refrain from using cameras. Recordings of the show will be shared at a later time. Our first speaker is Valentina LaMarca. Valentina is a junior at Skyline High School. Thank you so much for attending, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Hi, my name is Valentina LaMarca, and I'm an 11th grader here at Skyline High School. I take part in many student-run organizations to improve the educational environment at Skyline High School. So I'm excited to discuss with you today the importance of informational communication to pre-high schoolers. This topic is very relevant to this time of age because the pandemic and quarantine has affected grade school learning across the country. The National Center for Education Statistics concluded that 25% of all content was not retained by grade school learners based on national assessments. This is detrimental to educational development and overall student achievement. Furthermore, the cause of the pandemic and quarantine affected connections between students and peers and their teachers. So, motivation and overall excitement for school decreased throughout COVID. Now, further than just increasing the numbers in our nation, there are other benefits to tackling this problem, including increasing motivation in students, decreasing stress and tension in transitioning to high school overall, and making kids more excited about what they're learning to prepare them for their career paths. A personal step that I have taken to tackling this problem is through the creation and development of my podcast, I Wish I Knew. This podcast was initially created in the beginning of quarantine, my sophomore year, so about a year and a half ago, with the purpose of reaching out to a broad audience on what high school is about and preparing middle schoolers on what they will encounter in high school. The purpose of my podcast was to reach a broad audience and just give a good interview and introduction to what they will encounter in high school and overall help prepare them so they are not as stressed when transitioning into the next phase of their lives. My podcast can be listened to on Spotify as well as other podcast platforms including Google Podcasts and Anchor. The topics that I think are most important that I cover on my podcast include study habits and organizational skills, overall 4-year plans, so that's course planning and figuring out how classes will align with each student, what can be done over the summer to utilize their time and improve their success during the school year, the importance of connecting with teachers and peers and how it can enhance their success throughout high school, as well as extracurriculars and overall the socials that they will see in high school. Furthermore, I invited many guests onto my podcast, including current educators here at Skyline as my teachers, and some seniors that I see as role models in academically and as people. The reliability of my resource is proven through my statistics. My podcast is listened to in over 10 different countries, including France, Spain, Indonesia, and India, and it's most listened to in the United States. I have over 5 hours of listening content, as well as 100 concurrent listeners, and my audience is mainly female, ages 17 and under. I include the statistics to encourage all male students as well to help me balance out my audience and reach my resource to as many people as possible and a bigger variety of people as well. My resource is not the only thing out there for students in this day and age and middle schoolers after the pandemic. Make sure that you reach out to counselors and your other peer leaders to really get an idea of what high school is about to increase your success in high school. High school is pivotal in your career path and any pathway you want to take, so it's important to reach out to all organizational leaders and check your school bulletins and informational platforms. Thank you so much for coming out, and I'm excited to rebuild an environment of learning that is exciting through the art of communication. Thank you.
The next speakers I'd like to introduce are Jessie and Aarnav. Jessie and Aarnav attend Huron High School, and they'll be discussing about their organization, Inno Education. Please welcome Jessie and Aarnav.
Hi everyone, my name is Jessie.
My name is Unadkat.
And we're here today to represent Inno Education. So we're all very familiar with the common media portrayal that hyperbolizes the dread students feel towards their schooling. We see it in Charlie Brown, in Calvin and Hobbes, and in countless other of our Sunday favorites, where our beloved cartoon characters will sigh dramatically in front of a mountain of accumulated schoolwork, fall asleep during lecture, or complain about their teachers. The reason why these jokes are so commonly seen is because they're so relatable. They can get a good laugh out of practically anyone. And the reason why they're so relatable is because there's a grain of truth there. This running joke, to a certain extent, reflects an alarming reality in today's K-12 education that we're here to talk about with you all today. The truth of the matter is that many students don't enjoy learning because it's become so transactional. Too much emphasis is being placed on earning high test scores and achieving good grades rather than on what's really important. Not enough focus is being placed on helping students explore what they're truly interested in, nor on supporting their understanding of the world and its complexities. Ultimately, we've become so hyper-fixated on the scales we use to measure progress in learning that we've lost our passion for the learning itself. This trend that was already problematic prior to 2020 was severely exacerbated by schools' transition into virtual learning. Without regular interaction with teachers and peers, student engagement plummeted through the pandemic, and we saw students losing sight of why their learning is important. Now, this is where Inno education comes in. Inno was formed to reignite students' love for learning, and we see that mission as even more pertinent in our current condition. For some context, Inno Education is a student-founded and fully student-run 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the empowerment of middle school youth through service and education. Our mission is to promote an approach to learning that is both fun and accessible, with the ultimate goal of helping students rekindle a positive relationship with their education. To sum it all up, we seek to inspire a love of learning for learning's sake. We actualize this mission primarily through our 2-week summer camp, where our 30-member volunteer team of outstanding high school students serves as counselors and teachers for our middle school campers. Now, to really understand Inno and what we stand for, we're going to walk you through 2 of the core qualities that really define our organization. The first is our approach to curriculum development. Our team of high school volunteers develops all 10 of the courses we take to camp each year ourselves, and during our curriculum development process, we strongly emphasize the importance of creating interdisciplinary and activity-based lesson content. This is because the whole point of our courses is to introduce students to ideas they may not otherwise encounter until much later in their academic careers, but in a way that is fun and approachable to someone with only a middle schooler's level of background. For example, last year we introduced our students to fairly advanced chemistry concepts in our course called Food Science. Now, the reason why we saw particular success in this course is because we contextualized their learning in a way that the middle schoolers found relevant and interesting. So rather than balancing an endless list of chemical equations with no connection or meaning, they were learning about the chemical processes that underlie the foods they eat, how their taste receptors work, and other biological and chemical concepts that all fell within the umbrella of food. Similarly, another good example is one of our history courses called Build Your Own Empire, in which students learned about the rise, fall, and influence of ancient societies, all within the framework of a choose-your-own-adventure style game. So what this looked like is we were challenging students to think creatively and imagine themselves in the shoes of an ancient historical leader. Then they used the information that they learned throughout their 2 weeks of camp and applied it to inform decisions on behalf of their imaginary empire. This year, our course selection will range from architecture to psychology and even forensic science. Again, all of these courses with the intention of helping students find an interest and a passion for what they're learning. The second quality that really defines who Inno is, or rather what Inno is our status as a student-run organization. We see our age proximity to our campers as extremely valuable because it puts us in a unique position to establish close connections with them and really understand them as people. This is so important because it creates a unique classroom environment in which students feel comfortable with expressing themselves, their ideas, and their opinions, and with thinking creatively and collaboratively with their peers and with counselors alike. So when we're training our team for camp, we're constantly reinforcing the idea that at Inno, yes, we are teachers, yes, we're counselors, but we also serve as mentor figures and role models and friends for our campers. By teaching our content in a way that is engaging and hands-on, and by constantly striving to form bonds that are genuine with our campers, at Inno, we connect students with the curiosity and the passion and the joy that are central to being a kid, and help them understand that these same qualities are also central to being a student.
So now we would like to talk about how Inno handled the pandemic. So before COVID, our team would grow extremely close together through all the preparation we spent together preparing for camp. However, after COVID, our team bonding was severely limited and curricular teams could only meet online. Additionally, our marketing also suffered. It's already hard enough to convince parents to trust a group of high schoolers with their middle schoolers, and COVID just amplified this problem. Additionally, our normal methods of marketing, such as going directly to classes and talking directly to parents, were no longer feasible. However, due to our amazing marketing team, we were able to use online-based forms of marketing, such as through social media and digital forms of contact, in order to gather enough campers to run a camp in 2021. One other thing we tried to do is we tried to start our own YouTube channel to spread the joy of learning. Every week we would talk about a new topic, whether that's something we were researching about, or maybe an interview with another person from Ann Arbor, or even just some general advice we had. While we really believed in the YouTube channel, we realized we underestimated the amount of work it would take to sustain this type of channel for the long term, and decided to focus all of our efforts on the foundation of Inno, which was the camp itself. So this is what we did. We focused all of our efforts on running a camp in person in 2021, despite the challenges posed by COVID. Now, our number one priority was the safety of our campers. And so what we told parents is that we would be following all guidelines set out by the CDC. Additionally, beyond this, we wanted to make sure that our campers always felt comfortable. This meant that even if they didn't have a mask, or even if they didn't want to do a certain activity, we would always work with them to find a solution. Beyond this, we also had some other policies, such as making sure we were sanitizing desks, sanitizing materials, and maintaining social distancing to protect the safety of our campers and our counselors. So other than this, our goal was just to keep Inno as normal as possible. We wanted our in-person experience to feel as similar to that of pre-COVID times. And we believe that this is what made Inno successful in 2021. Because of our in-person experience, we were allowed to have hands-on activities as well as connect with our campers. Through classes such as food science, where campers could bake and cook their favorite foods, to rocket science, where campers would learn about the International Space Station through a large-scale, in-real-life version of the popular video game Among Us. Campers were able to bond with their peers, bond with counselors, learn about fascinating interdisciplinary topics, while also staying engaged with the activity. Additionally, we really pride ourselves on being able to connect with the campers. As high schoolers, we are young enough to be friends with the campers, while still old enough to provide mentorship and guidance to them as they enter high school. And we were able to accomplish this by being their friend at camp, talking with them, sitting with them at lunch, playing board games with them, making sure we're listening to them and that we're expressing ourselves to them as well. Perhaps most importantly, when they're in a classroom, counselors from other classes will come in and sit with them so that they never feel like there's any sort of disconnect between the campers and the counselors. And through this, we had a blast at camp. We had water fights, we played outside, we signed t-shirts, and we did a million things in between. And we believe that we were able to foster a strong community between the campers and the counselors and spread the joy of learning despite the challenges posed by COVID-19. So with this, we have one key takeaway for you. Find what makes you curious. Immerse yourself in this activity and learn as much as you can. Read about it, listen to podcasts about it, even perform your own experiments. Keep on expanding your horizons and always do it with passion. If you're a high schooler and find what we do interesting, we invite you to apply to join Inno in the fall. And if you are a middle schooler or the parent of a middle schooler and believe in what we've been talking about here, then we invite you to register for camp this summer on our website at www.educationinno.org. Thank you so much.
Up next, we have Tanay Panja. Tanay is an 8th grader at Clague Middle School. Please give him a warm welcome.
Hi, my name is Tanay Panja, and I'm an 8th grade at Clague Middle School. I'm an American Computer Science League national finalist for the past 3 years in the high school division, and I am a USA Computing Olympiad Silver Division qualifier. When I was 13, I went to Lake Michigan. We would always pack our bathing suits, our sandals, and a picnic tube. I would remember seeing the seagulls circle the sky as the waves reached the shore. But other than that, I also noticed this. Waste. All that waste was being piled upon more waste and more waste and more waste, put to no use whatsoever. So then I thought, how can we use this for something more beneficial? And it turns out that there are units called microbial fuel cells, or MFCs, that do just that. They use the microbes in the waste to harvest electricity. This concept was developed by a famous Yale bacteriologist by the name of Dr. Barnett Cohen, and the potential is limitless. We could apply this to our local wastewater plants in order to clean our water, while also being able to generate electricity. So then why haven't we applied this yet to our local wastewater plants? And the answer is, MFCs themselves don't generate a lot of electricity. So what can we do to optimize electricity generation of these MFCs? And that's where wastewater meets technology. You see, when I was 7 years old, I started coding. And as I aged, I built on those skills, which actually widened my ability to solve real-world problems. I use Internet of Things and artificial intelligence to find ways to optimize these microbial fuel cells. So I began my quest towards developing a solution. First of all, I wanted to have reliable and accurate data. So I developed my own microbial fuel cell. You can see right here what my microbial fuel cell looks like. I used household materials to build it and assembled it in my basement. I got the waste from my local lake. Or not my local lake, but a local lake nearby me. It consisted of two chambers. An anode chamber, which consisted of waste, and a cathode chamber, which consisted of oxygen and water. In the anode chamber, the microbes would feed on organic material to produce tiny energized particles called electrons. These electrons would flow as electricity through a circuit to do work, such as lighting up a light bulb, before returning to the cathode chamber and binding with oxygen. Now moving on to the technology side of things, I developed my own Arduino IoT system. An IoT, or Internet of Things, is essentially any microcontroller or mini computer that can read and send data over the internet. So you can see here a schematic diagram of what my Arduino IoT system looks like. So in the bottom left corner, we have the Arduino Uno Wi-Fi, and we have 3 sensors paired with it. The sensors all measure temperature, humidity, water level, and voltage. The Arduino Uno Wi-Fi reads the sensor values from these sensors and sends it over the internet. My system can be also illustrated using 5 steps. First of all, the MFC generates electricity. Second of all, the Arduino IoT system reads the sensor values from that MFC. Third of all, the Arduino IoT system sends this information to a web page on my personal web server. Fourth of all, the information from the web page would go to an Android app that I made. And fifth of all, which is the most important step, would be sending the voltage data specifically from that app to an online database called the Google Firebase for future analysis. Alright, now that I made my MFC and my Arduino IoT system, I was ready to put it into action. My MFC immediately started generating electricity, and my Arduino IoT system immediately started reading sensor values, over a period of 4 months. So you can see here the voltage output results. You can notice that the voltage output measured by the Arduino IoT system increases by mid-October and achieves its peak by November. That's great. But then notice that by January, the voltage output dramatically decreases. This is due to the lack of organic material, since the microbes are feeding on too much of it. In an ideal environment, these microbial fuel cells would feed on organic material continuously. Now that I gathered all my voltage data, I needed to find some way to analyze it. To do this, I used machine learning through artificial intelligence. Specifically, I used an algorithm called an ARIMA algorithm, or Autoregressive Integrated Moving Average Model. This model uses previous values of voltage data to predict future values of voltage data. In conclusion, I developed a system that can accurately determine the voltage in order to optimize MFCs and a way to improve other aspects of renewable energy. But also, I just proved the fact that anyone can engineer. No matter what background, no matter what age, everyone from this audience can engineer. If you're willing to make a change through technology in your environment, I think that's one of the greatest things you can do to the world. Being passionate about a topic and willing to work towards a specific goal, to be a change maker for both the environment and the community, is the greatest thing of all. Thank you.
The next speaker I'd like to introduce is named Julia Mee. Julia participates in both orchestra and cross country, and she attends Skyline High School. Please welcome Julia.
So, a few months ago, it was a regular Wednesday evening when I found out that my Thanksgiving break had just been extended 2 extra days. That meant school was essentially pushed back a whole week. And to my surprise, I wasn't surprised at all, because this had happened before, that is, school going remote or closing completely. In October for a few days, and then in January, there wasn't a single full in-person week. It didn't matter if there was homework to turn in, presentations to give, or in my case, finals to take. Not if there wasn't anybody who could grade the homework, or listen to the presentation, or proctor the final. As you can probably guess by now, the reason for these closures was because of teacher and staff shortages, a problem that has only been exacerbated by COVID-19. My name is Julia, and I'm a junior at Skyline High School. Ann Arbor Public Schools is only one example of many places where there has been a lack of educators. In September, East Point Community Schools near Detroit had to shut down for virtual learning when more than 20% of the staff was gone, 3 weeks after the start of the school year. Schools in the Upper Peninsula have told the same story: staff shortages and a lack of qualified applicants. This has been a huge issue, not just in Michigan, but in other parts of the country as well. From New Mexico having to bring in the National Guard to keep the schools open, to Philadelphia seeing a 200% increase in teacher resignations compared to the same time a year ago. 2 findings from the National Education Association sums it up. More than 500,000 educators have already left American public schools since the start of the pandemic, and about 55% current ones have admitted that they are ready to stop teaching earlier than planned. Now, I've just thrown out a lot of numbers at you. It may be overwhelming for you to hear,
It's even a little overwhelming for me to say. I mean, all I've given you so far are the results. So how about we backtrack a little and let's talk about some of the causes and later our steps going forward. The first cause that probably comes to mind is the pandemic. That is one of the big reasons, if not the biggest reason, why so many teachers and staff are leaving their profession. But this trend hasn't just been prominent since COVID. It's been on the rise for years. Okay, I have a few questions to ask you guys. Raise your hand if you think they apply to you. Here we go. How many of you have felt stressed today? What about feeling constantly stressed for the last month? Now, how many of you feel or have felt so stressed to the point of feeling detached or thinking you're not enough? Or if I rephrase it, to the point of feeling burned out? When I think of burnout, I think of a fire. At first it's bright and bold and fiery, but one day it starts shrinking. It starts getting smaller and smaller and smaller until all that's left of it is a pile of ash. The word burnout was first coined in a 1970 study by a psychiatrist interviewing human service workers under emotional depletion and loss of motivation and commitment. The official definition of burnout is defined as feelings of failure and feeling worn out due to too much stress for too long. It's often tied to work life, and there have been numerous studies relating it to the teaching profession. Some even report that teachers face burnout more than workers in other fields. The opposite of burnout, in a way, is high self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is a person's belief in their ability to succeed and complete tasks or goals. It's like self-confidence. For example, you could have high self-efficacy when it comes to signing up for and running all the way through a 5K. But if you had low self-efficacy, then you could be just as fit, but you'd be less confident in your running ability, which could translate to walking more throughout the race, or maybe you don't sign up for the 5K in the first place. Self-efficacy can apply to education as well. In fact, teacher self-efficacy is specifically about a teacher's belief in their ability to help and influence their students' learning. Since it correlates with higher levels of confidence and perseverance, that means that high teacher self-efficacy can combat burnout. Educating during the pandemic, however, has had a huge negative effect on this, especially with virtual learning. Teachers had to reinvent their teaching and learn how to use new online platforms. Techno stress, meaning stress over new technology and an increase in screen time, had never been higher. Teachers had to find ways to engage their students while providing assignments adapted to the screen. They had to help their students with personal issues and in their own technology all over screen, communicate with parents and administration all over screen, while dealing with their own anxiety over being in a lockdown. In short, teachers had a lot of balls to juggle, and it couldn't risk letting any of them drop. Then a time came when in-person school seemed like a real possibility. Things would get better then, right? Well, in reality, many schools across the country were not prepared to come back in person. They lacked personal protective equipment. Their facilities were not up to date. They were too crowded for proper social distancing, and COVID was still out strong. Even now, months into the new school year, we are still not past some of these obstacles. A few of the challenges that teachers face aren't actually new. For example, buying supplies at their own salary, a lack of respect and trust in their teaching ability, trying to pay off student loans while holding multiple jobs. Former teachers tell similar stories, whether they retired 5 days ago or 5 years ago. The pandemic has only made this more apparent. So what's being done to combat teacher shortages? Michigan has been trying to figure this out for years. Recently, more action has been taken, such as Governor Whitmer signing a bill that relaxed the qualifications needed to become a substitute teacher. The state has also considered allowing uncertified instructors becoming paid teachers for at least a year. However, these measures offer no long-term solution and do not address the long-standing problem of burnout. So what can be done instead? Actually, some teachers don't even see burnout as a problem. They see it as a symptom of the real problem, demoralization. When I think of burnout, I think of a fire. It starts going out, and in my head, it starts going out by itself. But what if someone or something was pouring water on that fire? The word burnout has the tendency to focus on the individual. It becomes your fault that you aren't strong enough or capable enough. If you cannot handle it, then it is a you problem. The problem instead is more of a we problem. By we, I mean our system and our policies. And its problem, demoralization, is when teachers are not able to teach how they want or not listened to and eventually feel burned out. There have been many solutions proposed to prevent demoralization, many of which come from former educators. They include administration genuinely taking into account teacher feedback, kindling relationships of trust, raising teacher salaries, free college tuition for those who choose to major in public education, and many more. If more long-term steps were to be taken, then we would be able to allow our teachers to continue and stay in their profession by creating a better environment. We would be able to encourage high self-efficacy rather than destroying it. We would also be able to draw more people into choosing education as their profession. It's a sad fact that less and less students are working towards degrees in education. Now, all these sound like really big steps, especially for regular citizens like us. I mean, where do you even start? Recently, the University of Michigan Ed Hub hosted a town hall that discussed this exact problem, bringing in multiple viewpoints from the community, state, and government level. Joining in on panels like that to educate yourself and keeping updated on current news is one way. You could also support the right bills when they come out, or get us well started, such as by joining advocacy organizations like the National Education Association. Or you could do something more on the local level, such as by donating supplies to the classroom, or empathizing with and treating teachers with the respect that they deserve. As a student, I have seen firsthand the effects of staff shortages. The missing school days, which were especially daunting with AP tests coming up. The canceled bus routes, which forced my parents to drive to school, and is something I do not take for granted, because I know many others were not as fortunate. There was one time my teacher was out, and my class didn't even have a substitute teacher. I hope that the next school year will be different, that I won't see articles with record-breaking percentages of teacher shortages, or receive last-minute news that there will be no transportation to school. Maybe the last time you were in a classroom was 5 months ago, or 5 years ago, or even 5 decades ago. No matter how long it's been since you were a student, let's all take some time and let's listen to our teachers. Thank you.
At this time, we will be having a brief intermission lasting about 20 minutes. Feel free to grab bottled water provided at the entrance to the auditorium, walk around, move around, use restrooms, anything that you need to do. And we'll be back in 20 minutes. Thank you.